Hello, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. It's kind of cool to be here. I'm a question and answer guy, honestly, and I'm very interactive. So if anybody has any questions while I present some of this information, I'm just going to ask you to just raise your hand, and when I find a good moment, I will stop and address any questions that you may have, and hopefully I have an answer. Also look pretty bad, right? So I'm going to do a brief presentation. I don't have much time, and I have a lot of content. So I'm going to do my best to convey as much as I can, to educate you as much as I can. And you know, like I said, I'm very happy to be here today, and I expect us to learn a lot from each other and what we're doing out there. So I'm going to start with a very quick history. So in 2009, MassDOT decided to get all their transportation agencies together, basically under one umbrella. They believed that it would provide a lot more accountability and accessibility between all the different agencies. And now there's over 10,000 employees now employed by MassDOT. And again, that's a combination of people from highway, aeronautics, rail and transit, the RMV, and the MBTA. So it's a very large organization. And of course, today I'm here with aeronautics, and we started doing a drone program back in 2017. Basically, the ball started rolling when the Secretary of Transportation was presented an interim drone policy in 10/16/2017. At that point, we basically said what we wanted to do and how we would fit in to the MassDOT organization. This is a quick overview of the interim policy if you guys want to take a moment to read this, but basically, we were looking to start a pilot program to do some research about the uses of drones throughout every part of MassDOT. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to facilitate the adoption of drones across MassDOT. And the most important things that we're worried about is safety, cost effectiveness, and security. There's some big words there. Anybody in the room have a drone program right now and basically have drones in their workflow? Yes? I mean, those are some pretty big things, right? So security is huge. I mean, we could have a team of 100 people just working on our data security. However, what we did is we took a real scalable approach, which is important. We're working on starting a strong foundation and then moving forward and supplying all these different agencies with data, which you're going to hear me say this 1,000 times, we hope increases the safety and efficiency of work being done within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Safety and safety and efficiency. So we took an approach. Our approach was the foundation, build a strong foundation, figure out and do some research how we're going to integrate the technology into the current workflows that MassDOT is working, which again can be tricky. It can be extremely tricky to apply the data to multiple projects throughout the state. And then normalization. Now I'm sure that'll take a little while, right? I mean, that's why we have a pilot program now. We're hoping that drones are used throughout the Commonwealth, and it's somewhat common. And of course, that's going to take some time. So today I'm going to talk about basically developing a comprehensive drone program and what we've done. And then most of the horsepower today is going to be, from me, is going to go into the review of the use cases and UAS operations that we're doing right now. Again, hopefully you can learn something from us. And if anybody has any questions at all throughout my presentation, just raise your hand and we'll get to you. We'll have a fun time here today. You guys look so happy. Anyway, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to grow capability with drones to support multimodal needs across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we looked at some of the needs that were out there within MassDOT. For aeronautics, of course, runway, taxiway, apron, pavement inspection was extremely important. Airport inspections, and what about obstructions for some of the runways within the Commonwealth? I mean, that's huge, right? A lot of thing is too, hey, you know what, if we can do this ourselves, we'll possibly be able to save the state some money, okay, long term. Rail and transit, the MBTA, we looked into rail inspection. Maybe we can inspect some rail. Maybe we can check for obstructions. So again, increase safety and efficiency here. The highway, pavement inspection, bridge, in environmental inspection. Environmental things are an extremely hot topic right now, and I'm pretty confident drones are doing a good job to monitor conditions within the state. We also wanted to get into emergency response or incident response. This is huge also, where a drone can be a huge asset. MassDOT Aeronautics is a state lead the state lead accident investigator. For pipeline fires, we've gone out we've gone out with Lawrence actually to document damage done to different infrastructure and houses within the state, like the Lawrence gas explosions we were out at, and documenting that. The cool thing about the pipe, I'm going to get into this in a little while, but we worked with the NTSB, which was huge for us, and it was a really big deal. And together we created some cool, very valuable products. We've also worked with the MBTA in FEMA to do all sorts of things. We'll get into the use cases in a little while, but basically we've extended ourselves to most every agency in the Commonwealth to see where our drones will fit. Talk about the fleet for a moment. This is what we currently have. It may look a lot like what you currently have in your inventory. Again, we wanted a scalable approach, so we started kind of small. We started with a couple of drones, a couple Phantoms, a couple Inspire 2s, Matrice. Anybody flying fixed wings in here? No, not many? Okay, none. That's fine. Anybody have any questions about anything up here? Not, I'm going to move on. There's Steve Rodding right there. He's from Aeronautics. He's one of the planners. That's him launching the EB, which of course we can go back. The EB, it's an RTK and PPK drone, which is great. Surveying is a really hot topic in this business, mapping and surveying, so that's very useful. The biggest difference, honestly, is flight time. That's huge. And also long distances. But the flight time is big, especially when you have a lot of land to cover. Otherwise, I mean, let's say we're working on something that's 100 acres, right? We could throw that fixed wing out and it'd map the area in, probably about a half an hour or so, maybe 40 minutes. Meanwhile, with rotary wing systems, like most of the drones that you see on the screen here, we're going to be changing out a lot of batteries. So our process for this data pilot is we're going to plan. So we're going to have some information needs. We're going to collect, command and control some data using drone systems. We got to process the data too. This takes a lot of time. I'll be honest, processing the data usually takes more time than actually getting the data, acquiring it or shooting it with a drone. Storing the data is huge. Where are we going to put it? We're dealing with 4K videos. We're dealing with images that are 10 megabytes apiece. And like we flew yesterday, we're looking at over 1,000 images. That adds up pretty fast. Okay, so having robust storage and a secure system to store all your data is extremely important. Data dissemination, important as well. And also, what about security? What about personally identifiable information, PII? I'm sure that's a hot topic with most agencies right now. Protecting the data, okay? Of course, there's a lot of stigma right now because people go, oh my God, if they see a drone, they're, oh my God, the government's taking pictures of me. Well, no, I'm trying to take a picture of a parcel of land, okay? But again, we're fighting that stigma, even on our team, every single day. That's why we've got to make sure we do things right and do them, do them properly, okay? Now for analysis, we do a lot of 3D models and orthomosaics, and we analyze what the output is. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were gonna. So you talked about like the public perception.
Sure.
I was just wondering if you're going to do a flight and it's over, say, a group of houses, and you're going to potentially capture some of that. Do you take the step to go and make your presence known? Go knock on doors, maybe hand out some flyers?
Sure, absolutely. So our approach with the MassDOT Aeronautics drone team right now is, as part of the interim drone policy, we do not fly over private property. Now, if we got in a position there was no other way to do it, and we have some pretty smart people on the team, if we figure out there's just no other way to do it at that point, we would then speak to our legal department and then approach the person and ask them if it's okay. We haven't been in that situation yet. The only time I can think is possibly in Lawrence during the gas explosions. But again, that's different. I mean, we're talking about incident response, emergency management, emergency response. It's a little different, okay? But private property is a big thing. You don't know. It adds to my workday a little bit, just to move around different properties and things like that, especially with automated flight, just moving things around properly. It just takes a little extra time to not go over private property. I'm going to go back to this. So we got to disseminate the information. Where is the information going after you collect it all and get it all packaged up? Who owns the information? Who has rights to the information? And the biggest thing is the deliverable valuable? That's a huge one, right? I mean, we can fly drones all day, but I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is how valuable is the data that you're collecting? What can you do with it? And I've seen so many programs across the country. They're up shooting images and things like that, but what are they doing with the data? What is the value? Sure, they're cool, but you need to apply it to something, and that's something we try really hard with when it comes to MassDOT. Of course, access and sharing things.
Question back there.
Go ahead.
Can the data be accessed through like a FOIA request?
Right now, I'll be totally honest, access to the data typically goes through the program managers or the administrator.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Everything's accessible, and not only that. So we can't take images and then erase any of them. So I mean, we can't do that. So that's part of our data policy. And so when you take an image, you're stuck to it. So you got to make sure that we always talk about position your drone and really take a look at where you're pointing that sensor at all times, so that you don't have any problem. And so we'd like to know. There's some programs that actually track the sensor every continuously, and so we're real concerned about the view shed for our sensors as well, because it can all be requested, and it's called a public records request in Massachusetts, and it's a pain in the neck because we have to respond very quickly to these things.
Go ahead.
So you had said you don't fly over private property.
Correct.
What about that field of view? Is that sometimes, were you being careful there? And
Oh, absolutely. So we're all about basically, sight angle. Okay, so utilizing the gimbal and also the position of the drone to not have, that such, as you know, I mean, every field of views for drones are typically, 60 degrees plus. So we do our best to aim our sensors exactly at the subject of what we're trying to get. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I come from the law enforcement side. How is that any different than I have a dash cam driving down the street, for whatever reason it's turned on, and I'm capturing private property as I go by? How's this any different?
Yeah, so the thing is, there really is no good analogy, right, in this case. So I can't take your situation and then transfer it over to the drone program. It just doesn't hold water, so in reality what happens is, because you actually have that, in some cases it's actually written into law. So the analogy that was used to us was we collect a lot of data on the road through all electronic tolling, right? Well, they had to write legislation in Massachusetts for that. So for the Big Brother concept,
yeah.
And so literally drones are new. So it's like, because you mentioned that analogy doesn't make it right for us. And I was actually, so when I briefed drones the first time in the fall of 2015, the ACLU commented immediately, right? And they talked about privacy. So we take it very seriously. Even to the point of, we're actually working on research to see whether or not, the sight picture for our drone, right? You have cameras, it's looking a certain way. We're actually looking at limiting the view shed, by utilizing science to actually limit the drone to where we want to look at it. And it's very difficult for us through an X, Y, and Z axis. But in any case, the analogy doesn't hold water for us. We have to address that independently. And over time, maybe we'd be able to do that. Go ahead, Mike.
I think the difference between a dash cam and a drone is we're now seeing people's backyards with a lot of reasonable expectation of privacy, versus if you're driving down the road, most of the stuff you're seeing is in public on a dash cam. The drone, being as where it is, is now, tearing into people's backyards. Same thing you're going to see on Google Earth. That's my argument. If I want to know someone has a pool in their backyard, I'll go on Google Earth.
Yeah.
But I think that's the.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And so and then the other thing is, like, what is high enough? You have airplanes flying over, backyards all the time. So what is high enough to where you're in the, what people can consider, the airspace, whereas you're getting into that area where privacy is a concern.
Right,
I think we have a lot to learn.
The floor for a private aircraft is about 500 feet, so you're 500 feet versus our ceiling, which is 400 feet-ish.
The difference is,
the differences there.
A drone is considered an aircraft, but applying the manned aircraft legislation and case law to a drone is never going to fly in this neck of the woods, at least in Massachusetts, as far as we're concerned. And if we're doing a surveillance mission, we want search warrants, we want the ADA to sign off on, the DA to sign off on.
The question really is there a difference between incidental capturing of that view or intentional? You know what I mean? If you're just in the process of piloting your drone, you're capturing that.
And I'm sorry, Sam, I'm stealing from you here.
No, this is great. I got 10 minutes left.
I mean, in the real world, we're capturing people's backyards. If it's going to court, we can hatch out people's pools and backyards. So I mean, but it's, we got to keep all the pictures. If we stop redacting stuff and it goes to discovery, we're going to be in a jam. So yes, you're going to capture people's backyards. We can just crop it out before it gets sent anywhere. So that's the bottom line.
That word incidental, I think that's the appropriate word. So for DOT and for a lot of the agency work that we do outside of the law enforcement agencies, we're not going to be taking this task as much, but the ACLU will call us out, right? So we're taking it very seriously. You bring up a good point. You really do.
All right, I'm going to keep going here. So we took a comprehensive approach, and we've offered our UAS services and support throughout the Commonwealth. You can see a map here. I've done a lot of driving. We captured a lot of good stuff. We've helped out a lot of agencies within the state. So as you can see, Lenox all the way to Taunton. Hoping to maybe get out on the Cape one of these days. That'd be great. Maybe do something a little different. But I spent a lot of time, honestly, driving from the East Coast to the West Coast. We worked with FEMA. There's all sorts of different use cases here. You can take a look. But as you can see, I've been with this team for a little over a year now. We've been extremely active. We stay busy. So what do we use the data for? What are some of the products? One of the biggest ones is public relations. Again, it's hard to kind of quantify public relations, but it's huge. Okay, so getting the imagery out there of some of the projects that are going on to the infrastructure within the Commonwealth is huge. So we do a lot of that. GIS, orthomosaics, and 3D models. We do one probably every couple of days. Are we going to do more? Absolutely. But we're doing a ton. Anybody understand orthomosaics? How they work? Basically, what we're doing is we're setting up a drone in a grid pattern, and it's collecting data straight down, with a sensor straight down. And then we're using software to process the data to basically stitch all the images together. Takes usually, probably 2 to 6 hours, depending on what you're working on. The cool part is what we do after that is, and I do personally, is we geo-rectify every single map that we produce. So not only are we going to have relative accuracy within the map that we've created, we're going to also have absolute and global accuracy. So I think that's huge. Now, is a drone ever going to replace a land surveyor? No. We're getting there, but you know what? I did surveying for 3 years, and I do not expect a drone to lift up a rock in a rock wall to look for a drill hole that was made in the 20th century, okay? So again, the biggest thing too with this approach is we're not around to take anybody's jobs. We're here to help out. We're here to assist. We're not here to replace anybody with MassDOT. Construction site monitoring is huge. We do a lot of that. Of course, there's a lot going on with the state in its infrastructure. Most recently, we've captured District 3's headquarters, which is being built in Worcester, and we've tracked the progress on that. Basically, going once a month and shooting images that we're going to use for orthomosaics and 3D models to basically give the project managers and the contractors an idea of exactly where things are and how they are. And of course, everything is time-stamped, and that's been a huge value as well. I'll be honest and tell you that that project's a little bit behind, and the MassDOT folks have been able to say, hey, listen, you know, we're supposed to be at phase 3, and we're only at phase 2. Well, no, only for a little while. No, actually, you're incorrect, because we have an orthomosaic and a 3D model here showing the, you know, the conditions. I mean, it's a photo. You can't, it was there. Okay, so then they're using that data, again, to hold the contractors accountable. Talk about savings, it's huge. Accountability, huge. Thermography is another big one, using infrared systems to you know, record video, or again, just take radiometric images. It's huge. And for incident response, imagery, video, and live streaming video, I added a little to this last night. We actually recently got a tethered system, which will basically hold the drone up and supply it with continuous power up to 100 meters. Okay, so by FAA definitions, it's a kite, right? It's basically a kite up there. But again, for site monitoring, disaster preparedness, it can be extremely helpful, okay? So we just have to implement that into our current workflow. But again, it's another tool that we have in our toolbox to assist other agencies within MassDOT. So I'm gonna talk about some use cases quick, and then I'll open it up for some questions. We documented the replacement of the Commonwealth ComAv bridge. This is a huge project. However, it went up pretty fast, using a lot of prefab materials. We ended up flying 11 missions over a span of 3 weeks, and this was all for PR, basically to give to the MassDOT PR folks so they can disseminate it and say, you know, this is the current status of the construction. And also progress, it was cool to get progress pictures to the heads of highway, like John Gulliver and those guys. So every day, pretty much, we went up and took about 30 to 40 pictures. Is it the most difficult thing we ever did? No. But it does give a ton of value okay, thank you. It supplies us with plenty of value. As you can see here, a couple images we took. It's kind of towards the end. The State House dome inspection was huge. The team over at the State House basically were requesting money to have the dome repaired and used us to do an assessment of the dome. One of their concerns is, you guys see the darkened areas on the dome? Basically, what they wanted to do is figure out what that was and get a better eye on it. Now, I don't know about you, but it's a lot cheaper to fly a drone than to have a manned aircraft. And initially, they were thinking about helicopter operations to, you know, capture imagery of this. And of course, we did it with a drone. This whole mission lasted about 24 minutes. I mean, we used a Matrice 210 aircraft with dual payloads, and we're able to capture a ton of data in a very short amount of time. As you can see here, this was the unprocessed one. My gimbal was a little off. But as you can see, that darkened area right there. And then there's the IR imagery. Corresponds, right? Just a bit.
Sam, I wonder if you could go into some detail about how you planned this mission as well.
Yeah, sure. So what we had to do for this mission is request authorization from the FAA to fly it. There was, on Lance, it was 100 feet. They would allow us to fly up to 100 feet. The pinnacle of that dome is 100, all the way on the top is 151 feet. Therefore, we had to do all the paperwork and get authorization to fly at 150, which I was happy with. One of the things we always do is we don't ask for more than we need, number one. The second thing is we always geofence our drones, which is huge, okay? So provide it with automated limits. What else? And also, of course, we set our elevation. So right when we arrived on scene for this, we set the maximum altitude at 150 feet, or actually I think I did 148 because the boss was stopping by. No, I'm just kidding. So we did 148, and Then there's safeguards, okay? So it decreases human error and things like that just by having it in the system. Do I have a question in the back?
Yeah, kind of. So when you set the elevation, is it just from the home location, that elevation point?
That's
not
correct.
necessarily above ground level?
That's correct. Yep, it was actually at the top of the stairs of the State House. So it's all relative to where you took off.
Did you use an app to get your authorization, or you said paperwork?
Yes. So yes, I had to use the FAA's drone zone through the state's account and request that way. It was before. It was right before Lance, unfortunately. So
I mean, just I don't want to get into the weeds, but whoever's flying today, so a lot of the stuff in AirMap is pretty new, the last 3 weeks. So I thought, okay, we'll fly at noon today, say. So I went to AirMap to see what I would get, and I didn't get my typical FAA, here's your case number and we'll let you know. I got nothing. So I don't know, but I go in airspace that we have in Vermont.
Sure.
I'll put it in and it's like, so I've done like 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, but nothing ever comes back. We never get any word from the FAA when they'll cancel it 24 hours and say not authorized, unable to process.
So originally for this mission, I asked for 7 days. We always try to give ourselves plenty of time due to weather and other environmental conditions, staff and things like that. And initially the FAA said, no, we're not going to give you 7 days. So I called DC and I said, what's the deal? Well, what can we do for you? How can I make you feel comfortable with our operations here? I'll give you whatever we have. And they said, you know what? I'll tell you what, do it 1 day at a time. Ask for authorization for 1 day at a time. And we ended up doing that and getting the authorization that way, just for 1 day at a time.
What is 1 day at a time?
Giving us 1 day to fly in that area.
I mean, I just asked for an hour.
Yeah, so I don't want to. It's all right. So basically, when you send something through AirMap, it goes to DC and then it shoots up to the airport manager of that given airport. Okay, so it'd be like Scott Coleman at Logan Airport. Okay, so he sees all those Lance requests that were manually done, and he'll manually authorize them or not allow them. So there may have been a, depending on where you were, there may have been a holdup at the airport, or who knows, maybe the request didn't get out of DC. So this is some of the data that we acquired. We use Flare software to do an analysis here. As you can see, the darkened areas were 34.6 degrees, and around it were 23. I mean, a pretty big difference of 11 degrees. Now, was it did we have to figure out, okay, why is that different? Why is it thermography, or why is there a variation in temperature? No, but we supplied the data, okay? So what we're doing is supplying the data to justify people getting more close or working on this structure. I only have a couple minutes, so I'm going to do my best here. This is D3. We talked about this before. We go there about once a month. We'll shoot an orthomosaic and a 3D model, and then I will georectify it. The last one, I was able to get close to 0.12 of an inch of global or absolute accuracy. Okay, and what we do is we use single band GNSS receivers on the ground, arrow points, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, to triangulate our locations within the map. So we put down control and then we integrate our control into the map, and the map georectifies to our control points after it identifies them. Go ahead.
How long do you leave those stations there to get accuracy?
They say 45 minutes, and I'm a nut, so I give it like honestly an hour. Just a little extra time. I call it letting them cook. We'll set them out and let them cook a little while. But then it gives us an hour to fly, right? I mean, you can fly it towards the beginning, right when you put them down, or towards the end. It doesn't matter because that data is going to stay the same, okay? So this is one of the orthomosaics from D3. And so this is one of, this is one of the 3D models rather. This is around 340 images that were stitched together in georectified. If you look really closely, you can find some ground control points. But this model right here, of course, can be extremely helpful with progression and how well they're doing. And then this is an orthomosaic. And what I do here, look at this, no hands. What I can do here is actually measure things. And again, it's georectified, so it's extremely accurate. Anybody use drone deploy in here? No, a couple? All right, great.
Hey, Sam, 5 minutes.
All right. I got this. So of course, I'm just drawing some distances and things. We can also count objects, okay? How many trees in, in a certain given area? Really count anything. Volumetrics are huge. Let's say you have a huge stockpile. You can fly it, make a 3D model, draw a circle or around the perimeter of the stockpile, and then what it is, what the material is, and how much it's worth per pound or whatever, you know, per square yard, I'm sorry. And then you can do the math for that. So it's helpful in many ways. One of the cool things that we've done is we integrated our data into CAD. Again, our data is worth nothing, okay? Yeah, an orthomosaic looks cool, a 3D model looks cool, but you need to be able to integrate this stuff into AutoCAD or into the current workflow, whatever your customer's using. So that's been huge. We flew, and our data, or our DTM or our DSMs, digital surface or terrain models, actually proved that we actually saved the state $300,000. I mean, there was a fill underestimate, which then they could change their budget to, you know, make up for the shortfall. Environmental inspection's a big one. We're working out in Springfield right now. They're going to replace the Morgan-Sullivan Bridge. It's near like the Springfield and West Springfield and Agawam line. And environmental wanted us to monitor the banks. So basically what we're doing is we're creating 3D maps and orthomosaics of the banks of this bridge to say, okay, the bridge is done and this is how the banks were affected. And of course, we hope they aren't affected, but it's documented and it's there. Aeronautics Bridge, this is in Russell, Massachusetts. This was decommissioned or not used, basically shut down in 1984. They were putting up a temporary bridge, which they called for a lifespan of 5 years. And it's still up. The temporary bridge is still in place, and the Aeronautics Bridge is still sitting there. So basically what they want to do now is decide, they're doing an assessment if it's really worth it to rehab or renovate or to tear down, okay? Extremely hazardous. It's a waterfall. It stands about 100 feet above the water. There's a waterfall, rushing rapids underneath this thing. So of course, by using a drone, we're not sending people on the bridge. I mean, I went there just for a site visit, and they said, the bridge inspector for the state said, do not get anywhere near this bridge at all. Okay, so we used our Z30 camera or sensor, EO sensor, zoom sensor, to gather information for their engineers. And they're actually the last, I sent them data 2 weeks ago, and they were extremely pleased with the data that we had. Aircraft accidents, we work alongside the NTSB and supply them with data if necessary. We had an aircraft crash in Orange, Mass last year, also Cranland. There was actually 2 in Cranland, I believe, within 3 weeks of each other. Pipeline, we were out there with Bill English from the NTSB assisting with the pipeline things, with the pipeline explosions, okay, due to the natural gas over in the Lawrence area. And then we ended up doing some 3D assessments that were used towards an analysis of exactly what happened. So it was great, you know, basically state and local and even federal cooperation. And that's one of our Inspire 2s flying. Unfortunately, I think there was a fatality at that scene there. And there's one of the arrow points that we use, single band GPS receiver. We worked with FEMA in their MOBEX exercise. We're out there for 2 days. We did a lot of overwatch, and we made a couple 3D models of some facilities they had on site. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't too favorable, but we did get some work done while we were there. META evacuation drill, we assisted them. They were basically simulating what would happen if there was a derailment over by the Fenway station. So agencies got together, and we went ahead and did that. Public relations documentation, again, they moved a building over at the North Adams Airport. We documented that. And yeah, that's pretty much it, unless you guys have any questions at all. Anybody have anything? Go ahead. There's got to be something good. Go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
You said that you use dual payloads for the dome inspection, so video and thermal?
Yeah, we used EO and then thermal. Okay. But now we have like an XT2, which is dual sensor. So one sensor, one payload has EO and IR in the same package. It's extremely robust. And then we use the other one as a backup. We are all about redundancy. Every time we fly, we bring more than, you know, we always bring 2 or 3 drones with us. We go there, get it done, and move out. Go ahead. Second question, sure.
What types of projects are you using the fixed wing drones for?
Fixed wings are for large area. We're honestly exploring, it's extremely difficult given the policy right now to use fixed wings, but the hope is to use them on very large areas. And also, I expect them to be a huge tool when it comes to some of the BV law stuff that we're doing. The Del Air aircraft that we have, the Del Air UX-11, it flies for an hour and it runs on 3G, 4G, and LTE, not just 2.8 or 5.4. So as long as there's 3G, 4G, LTE, I mean, that aircraft can stay in the air and we can have our eyes on it. So I believe the Del Air, as far as scalability, I mean, it's absolutely huge. I think it's going to be a great asset for us. And it's also, they say all weather, but it's weather resistant in comparison to like an EV fixed wing system. Go ahead.
With that large area, how does your team cope with line of sight?
So we have a ton of people from robotics, and we also have, from aeronautics, and we have a ton of people from the drone team. So a lot of the time we just use multiple VOs and then just standard, two-way radios. But that's part of the comprehensive plan that we make prior to going out. And there's a lot of documentation and process before we even go out and deploy those assets. So we make sure everything's in place, and there's a ton of smart people within our organization who can take a look at things. And go ahead, Scott.
Do you want to go back to the State House Dome slide that I think actually shows where the takeoff point was and where you positioned all your VOs?
Yeah.
That's a good one, just to kind of give a sense how before we fly anything, we really kind of go through an entire flight readiness review process just to make sure that we know, all right, where's the drone going to take off, where's the operator going to be, where do we want to position the VOs. State House Dome was, because it was a large thing, a large obstacle, at the altitude, you would not be able to see the drone from any one position for the entire flight. Again, Sam and his team really kind of figured out where they should position people so that we'd have constant coverage.
So, sorry, so daisy chaining VOs, is that allowed under the visual observer in Part 107? Or is that required? There's a lot of gray area from what I
Yeah, sure. So as long as we're not over private property and there's somebody who has their eye on the drone and somebody that can, basically intercept or take control of the drone immediately. Right. I mean, that's the most important thing. As long as we can take over full control of that drone, and as long as it's within line of sight of an operator that's on scene.
Yes.
Any other questions? Oh, this is great. Go ahead. You're gonna get me in big trouble.
Yeah, two more questions, and then we gotta move on.
Is there interface to a remote area with somebody can look over your shoulder? Guess what you're looking at?
I mean, we've done that throughout plenty of districts. You mean like as if I'm actually flying a drone? If
somebody back home is watching what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a streaming platform that runs on 4G LTE, and we're able to basically use an RTSP connection and transmit a live stream out. Last week we were out in Belchertown, Massachusetts at the Quabbin Reservoir, and we're able to transmit all the way to the MBTA's SOC, which, as you know, is a good distance away, with extremely little buffering delay, latency. It was extremely fast. I mean, the delay was like a half a second. It was very impressive. But we work hard with testing our systems and capability as well. Go ahead. You're the last one.
Yeah, go ahead. Fly over non-participants. How do you deal with that?
So a lot of the times we don't. However, if we do, like on the ComAv project, what we do is we get the flight team, we get the contractors, everybody on site together with us and give them a safety briefing. Okay, so basically there's going to be a drone flying around. This is how we fly. This is where we're going to fly. This is how long we're going to be here. This is what you have to be concerned about. Of course, with weather briefings and things like that. But we get everybody together and take a real holistic approach to getting things done. And that's it. Thank you. I appreciate it.